What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. Of course, I am Dave Smith. Very happy to be joined, returning to the show, one of my favorite people to talk to, Clint Russell. You know him from Liberty Lockdown. You know him from being all over the place in the Liberty movement over the last few years. Me and him were just down in Orlando, Florida together at the Young Americans for Liberty 2024 conference. What do they call it? Revolution something?
YALCON. It's their annual convention.
Yeah, that was a fun time, huh?
It was awesome, man. I mean, every time I get invited to that event, I'm always pumped because, like, anytime I'm feeling blackpilled, which particularly after the past 45 days, it's like there's a lot of reasons to be like, oh, man, this is scary stuff we're dealing with. And then I get there and there's 1,000, like, 20 to 22, 23-year-olds that are all literally giving you a standing ovation just because you said hi. You know, it's like, It's crazy. The energy there really does rejuvenate you. And I'm sure you felt the same.
Yeah, 100%. And a lot of the people there, like I talked to some of the kids who are, when I say kids, 20 to 25-year-olds or whatever, right. young Americans for Liberty. But they'll be like, thank you so much for coming out. And I think sometimes they don't realize from our perspective, the middle-aged Americans for Liberty that we are, we're like, no, dude, thank you. Because it's nice. It really is kind of nice to see that they're like, oh, there are young people who are so enthusiastic about these ideas. It does give you a little bit of like, okay, there's some hope for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I gotta do a quick story. I don't even think I talked to you about this while we were there, but Kyle Rittenhouse got dragged over the coals this past weekend. And
wait, so just hold on, but just tell this for people who don't know, tell the whole story of what, because I do know the story of what he got dragged for. So go ahead, tell people the story.
So basically in the middle of the night, I think it was Friday night, he tweets out that he's going to be writing in Ron Paul. And a lot of people in MAGA country lose their effing minds. They go absolutely ballistic. I'll get into some of the details of how ballistic they go, but basically, I see him for the first time. I've never met Kyle before, but he follows Josie, the redhead libertarian, and he's like, Josie, hey, and then I'm like, I'm gonna talk to this kid. I gotta get the lowdown on what happened here. And I end up talking to him like 15, 20 minutes, and he gives me the whole rundown that he had met Ron Paul for the first time that night at YALCON, and he was just enchanted. He was just like, this is the guy. Trump wasn't very good on two-way. Ron Paul is great on everything. I'm going to write him in. Totally authentic, totally sincere, totally genuine. He then has hours of phone calls with the Trump camp where they basically tell him, they give him assurances that things will be different in the second term, and he ends up changing his mind and he puts out the endorsement for Trump. Setting that all aside, I put out a post and I say, playing off of the Dom Luker, you've been exposed nonsense. I say, Kyle Rittenhouse, you have been chosen to be rehabilitated, and I'm just playing off of that, and I just say that he's an awesome guy. He's such a nice guy, and then I'm thinking to myself, like when we're 20 minutes in this conversation, I'm looking at him, and I'm like, the last time, or like the only thing I know you from is you on your back in Kenosha, just rocketing off shots at assailants over and over again. And he's such a like innocent, sweet, sincere kid. It's just the juxtaposition between what we knew him from and what he is today. Bizarre. But I think of him as an American hero. I know a lot of people say I shouldn't, but I think the way he defended himself and then had to fight for his life and defend the Second Amendment at the same time, I thought it was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, well, look, first of all, about the story, like the original story of Kyle Rittenhouse, I think you could certainly argue, and like I would say, if there were young people who are listening to my show, if there are like nationwide violent riots, I totally support people defending property and defending people and all of that. I'd say, probably if you're 20 or whatever he was, how old was he when it all went down?
17.
He was 17. Was he that young? Jeez. Okay, I'd say probably don't go dolo 17-year-old with your rifle and be like, I'm just going to do this myself. It's like, I think it would be wise to plan and have a group there with you, a well-trained group, preferably. But I do think that kind of, and I haven't met the guy. I mean, he was there, but I didn't talk to him at all. You did. But that kind of is consistent with what you're saying, right? A little bit of like a sweet, innocent kid who is like, I'm going to go do the right thing, and maybe didn't completely plan for like how, even obviously things could have gone really bad. He could have been seriously hurt. But even in his situation, first of all, before you're even charged and go to trial, how difficult that's going to be to kill somebody. It was clearly in self-defense. I mean, I thought that was obvious from the time I first saw the video. I'm on the podcast talking about how it was clearly self-defense back when it happened. But still, that's quite a toll on your own soul to take. And then to go through a trial where you think you might be looking at life in jail. The kid's been through quite a lot. But I do think the spirit of what he did was somewhat heroic, and the way he was just ruthlessly demonized in the corporate media. I don't even know if people remember, there's so many things that the corporate media does that are so twisted and sick that it's hard to remember all of them. Literally just as you're saying this, I remember, but they literally all started talking about how he was like a racist, hunter who crossed state lines with a weapon illegally to go try to kill people. By the way, none of this was true. None of it was true. The guy got acquitted. He acted in self-defense, was literally won in a court of law in front of a jury of his peers. And of course, not so much as an apology from any of those people who said that. And by the way, not just the corporate press. I know people on social media and stuff, who were so vicious toward this kid, this 17-year-old who's however you feel about him, he was on his back. He shot up at a guy they just missed him with a skateboard. Another guy charged him with a gun. It's not as if he was a cold-blooded killer who went to kill people. Clearly that he was in a desperate situation. Just absolutely disgusting how people treated him back in 2020.
I mean, it was the most, especially since you and I are we oftentimes will be critical of the police and excessive use of force and violence and things like that. So we're very accustomed to looking at these types of videos. I've never seen such trigger discipline. I've never seen a guy who's literally waiting until the last second. He does not want to do this. And it's every time that keeps happening to him, he's sprinting and then it happens again. And it's it's just remarkable self-control for a I guess a kid of his age. I was going to say a man, but I don't even know if I would call him that at that age. But then, just to see him, all of the people that had stood up for him, I guess you would say, from the Republican side of the aisle that were sending him donations and things like that, they all feel this unbelievable sense of betrayal because he says he's going to write in Ron Paul because to him, the Second Amendment is the most important thing and Trump was not perfect on it. Therefore, I'm going to write in Ron. And to have them flip on him the way they did was just stunning to me, honestly, because from, and I guess this is once again, the Libertarian versus the GOP divide where it's no, I actually care about these on a principled matter. He defended himself. He utilized the Second Amendment to keep himself alive. He did nothing wrong ultimately, other than maybe being naive, as you said earlier. And for you guys to now say that, Joey Manorino said, I wish he had been convicted. Just pure madness.
Who is that? Joey Manorino?
He's the Laura Loomer of the conservatives. He's just a male version of that. But
how old is he? Ballpark.
Manorino?
Yeah. What do you think?
30-ish. I don't know.
Okay. You know why? Because the reason first off, because I just I'm so disgusted by the broadly speaking MAGA reaction to him endorsing Ron Paul or saying he's going to write in Ron Paul. And I'm not saying everybody in the Trump movement was like this, but I do just ask the age because I'm listen, okay, first of all, as you pointed out, it's okay, so he really cares about this one issue, which is guns. And of course, Ron Paul's great on it and Donald Trump's not. And if that's also true, if there's any issue that you just happen to be right about. Ron Paul was also right on that issue, and Donald Trump is at best okay on the issue. That's the truth. There's no issue. Name me one issue that matters. Ron Paul was better on it than Donald Trump is, because that's what Ron Paul did. Listen,
it's obviously
by the way,
true.
There's not even knocking Donald Trump. It's just Ron Paul's thing is that he's right about everything, and Donald Trump's thing is that he wins. So okay. So if you want to say, hey, Ron Paul was right about everything, but he couldn't win the presidency, fair point. That's Donald Trump's thing. He can win. Ron Paul's just read everything and knows everything. But for the reason I ask about the guy's age is because you better not be old enough that you voted in the GOP in 2012 or 2008. Because if you did and you voted for John McCain or Mitt Romney over the Thomas Jefferson of our generation. In fact, substantially better than Thomas Jefferson, if you really want to go just purely on the issues. But like the idea that, and this is what's so wrong, but it's like this is like to all the Trump people out there. And I'm not even hostile to Trump. You know, I gave a speech the other day at Young Americans for Liberty, and I go, listen, if you guys are voting for Trump, I totally understand why. Here's just what I think we should do, even if you are voting for Trump. I don't know if my speech has been posted, but if you can go find it, I bet. But it's just like, hey, look, man, why is it as Donald Trump has his I promised to give the best blowjob to Israel national convention, and as he's going around, you know what I mean, like being essentially running as a like establishment Republican, at least this time. It's not the 2016 campaign. His campaign is basically just like Kamala Harris is the far left and I'll be a reasonable Republican. It's like, so what? So you're mad at this kid for what? Being good on guns? Like, is anyone in any of you Trump supporters, are you actually arguing with me that Donald Trump's take the guns first and due process second, which is a direct quote? This isn't like find people on both sides. This is a real quote in context that he said, the banning bump stocks or whatever. Are you really saying
which the media never drags him for, because even though it's true, because they agree with it.
Yeah. No, he won't get dragged for that because it's real. He'll just get dragged for being a Russian agent who praised white nationalists, all that bullshit. But so like, are you actually, is there any, and if there is anyone, you get an automatic invite onto this show. If you're actually for Trump and you're saying that, Donald Trump's position of take the guns first, due process second, is better than Ron Paul's position of the government should have absolutely no restrictions on your right to bear arms. If you're actually saying that position's better, then fine, let me hear your argument, and then we'll take that apart. But if you're conceding, as 99.9% of you would have to, that Ron Paul is better on that issue, what exactly are you saying? That you just demand loyalty?
Yes.
That's you just, because you supported him when he was clearly acting in self-defense, that therefore he must support Donald Trump forever. Like how bad of a position could he take? What if Donald Trump said he's going to ban Christianity? Should he still support him because you supported him when he acted in self-defense? Like, think about how warped. It's like, man, politics just ruins people's brains.
It really does.
All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Babel. This summer, you can start speaking a new language with Babel. Why Babel? Because it works. Instead of paying hundreds of dollars for a private tutor or fooling yourself with language apps that are little more than games, Babel's quick 10-minute lessons are designed by over 150 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babel is designed by real people for real conversations. All of Babel's tips and tools for learning a new language are approachable, accessible, rooted in real-life situations, and delivered with conversation-based teachings. Studies from Yale and Michigan State University, as well as others, continue to prove Babel is better. For instance, one study found that using Babel for 15 hours is the equivalent to a full semester at college. With over 10 million subscriptions sold, Babel is real language learning for real conversations. I've always wanted to learn how to speak a new language. I'm going to give Babel a shot. I'm going to learn a new language with Babel. You guys come with me on this journey. I'll decide what language I want to learn. Plus, Babel's speech recognition technology helps you to improve your pronunciation and accent. And here's a special limited time deal for our listeners to get you started right now. You can get 55% off your Babel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/problem. Get 55% off and learn a new language starting right now at babbel.com/problem. That's BABBEL.com/problem. Rules and restrictions may apply. Babbel.com/problem. All right, let's get back into the show.
Just to kind of steel man their position, they fear that they will lose their nation if the Democrats get another 4 years in power. So I think for most of them, they probably would concede that Ron Paul is superior to Donald Trump in many, many ways. Right. Probably not always, like you and I would say, but many ways they would say Ron Paul is better, but he's not running. He can't win. Kamala is the imminent threat. We must defeat her. That's the steel man. But what doesn't excuse any of that is that this is a still a young man who, by the way, walks around with an emotional support dog because of the trauma he's experienced, having to take multiple lives. And
I did notice he had
trials.
a dog there. Oh, geez,
yeah. And then he's basically like trying to piece his life together. On top of that, he's still only 21. If you're not allowed to be idealistic at 21, well, then I don't want anything to do with you people. You're lunatics. Like this is just pure madness. So to see the treatment that he got from some of the more prominent influencers on the GOP side, it just really drove home the fact that we are still dealing with a significant cult mentality. And it happens on both sides. You have the Trump derangement syndrome, but as we've said many times, it goes both ways. You have people that are deranged to believe that he's their savior and people that are deranged to believe that he's the devil. And I'm just not either of those. I'm like he is at best a defensive posture against the onslaught, which is the globalist World Economic Forum plotting against the American people. Like that to me is the best thing I can say about the guy. And they view him as a deity. It's bizarre.
Yeah, I just feel like for me personally, anytime anyone is asking you to turn your brain off and just blindly support something, you're no longer on my team. Right. Whatever my team is, that's not my team. And if you feel that way, then please stop listening to me. I mean, I don't know what else to say. If you're going to say not just being idealistic, but being young and being
principled?
Yeah, idealistic and correct, like on the right side of the issue. And you're going to come out and demonize that guy. Like, do you really think it's true? And really, just think this through for a second, guys. Donald Trump was elected in 2016, and it was because he was our only shot. And we were going to lose the country if Hillary Clinton was in, and he was going to drain the swamp and all of this. And however you feel about Donald Trump, and I'm certainly I'm kind of with you guys on a lot of things. Obviously, like the guy was framed by his own intelligence community. He was impeached over nonsense. After that, he had the justice system weaponized against him over nonsense. And after that, a sniper was kind of allowed to get up on a roof, which was a little bit strange. We could talk about that a little bit more. But you're like, okay, but regardless, his first term ended in the lockdowns of 2020 and the disastrous year that was 2020. And then we have 4 years of Joe Biden. Clearly, just electing Donald Trump is best case scenario. What are we talking about? Saving the republic for 3 more years? And then the 4th year is really bad. So, okay, so we need a little, even if you want to support Donald Trump, I get the argument. Okay, we need a little bit better out of him this time. Are you really saying that there should be no influential person, whoever goes, I really like that Ron Paul's perfect on guns? See, the thing is, Clint, I wouldn't have had any problem if anyone in the MAGA movement were to be like, hey, Kyle, I get it. Ron Paul is the gold standard. Or even if it wasn't like what we want to hear, they just go, look, Ron Paul was great on guns. But here's why I think you still got to support Donald Trump, because okay, fine. But the way people were viciously attacking him and then kind of celebrating when he caved or whatever happened. I don't know exactly the details, but when he went, okay, fine, I am supporting Trump. And they're like, fine, you're back. People were like you said, I mean, that I saw a few different examples that were bad like that, but oh, you think he should have gotten convicted now? Yeah. So that's where you're at now. So what you're saying is that the kid who, as I said, I think somewhat naively, but idealistically, wanted to go out and defend people and property during the worst of the riots. By the way, all you MAGA influencers, where were you during the worst of the riots?
Right.
Were you out there with a gun defending people and property? Probably not. I'm not saying I was, but I'm just saying probably not. Okay. So the guy who goes out there and defends that gets raked over the coals by the entire corporate media in a way that none of us have ever experienced. You know what I mean? Like that guy, you're attacking him for saying he's a pure Second Amendment absolutist for the crime of criticizing your president, who said take the guns first, due process second. You don't have more criticism for Donald Trump saying that as the president of the United States than this kid? I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what to say about that. All I'll say is that if you are a Trump supporter, if your whole thing is, well, we just need to support Donald Trump, we just need to get him elected, just know that there's a group of us who, look, we're not the biggest voting bloc in the world, but we're big enough that Donald Trump had to come speak at our convention and come speak at our Bitcoin conference and all this to try to get us, and just know how much that turns us off from your whole thing, that you care so much more, blatantly care so much more about the figure than any principles.
Yeah, well, exactly. And Kyle Rittenhouse lived out your principles in a way that you guys never will. Like you'll never ever have a moment that demonstrates that level of courage in your effing lives. Never. So let's just remember that. All the people that have, huge followings that are dunking on him in the most vicious way possible, keeping in mind too that he has already been pilloried and strung up by half of this country, and now the other half, or a portion of it, has seen fit because he got out of line for 10 seconds to do the same thing to him. I was absolutely disgusted by it, and the fact that I then met him a few hours later and got to have a lengthy conversation with him, to see the sincerity in his eyes, that it was like, dude, I had just met Ron Paul. Like, do you understand? And I was like, dude, I understand. Yes, I understand. Of course I understand. This is the most understandable thing ever. If I had just met Ron Paul, I probably would have tweeted that out too. So, it's just, it broke my heart, but I'm glad that, like, what you were saying about, well, what if an influencer coming out and saying, hey, I'm not in line with this because this is the thing I care about most, and he wasn't good enough on it. And then you end up getting multiple hours of phone calls from Trump's team saying, hey, we're going to be a lot better the second time around. Basically, they're giving him assurances, maybe even concessions. I don't know what the content of the call contained, but it's like that is where you actually make real progress. You don't, like, if you're just using your influence to grow a following, but you never actually get anything to change in the world, well, then maybe you're not using it to the highest level. Like, he actually did that because he stood on principle, a thing that these people will never fucking do. He did that, and now maybe Donald Trump is 2% better on 2A. And if that's the case, then he is once again a better human being than the rest of you motherfuckers, and he's more courageous and he's more principled. So yeah, sorry for the rant. He's just a good kid.
And it's such an important thing. I've talked about this a few times on the show over the last couple months, and it was one. So I mentioned this before, but just to tell you. So there was, I don't know, it was like a couple months ago, and it was whenever Thomas Massie was on Tucker Carlson's show, and you saw when he was talking about how everyone has an AIPAC handler in Congress. Yep. And he was like, yeah, I tell them they can't come in my office. Like, if you're working on behalf of a foreign government, like, sorry, you can't even come in and then he told me this personally. I don't remember if he said this on Tucker or not. I remember he told me this when I met him, but that there are people he who works for AIPAC, and they'll have like their AIPAC like pin on, and they'll try to come in his office, and he goes, if you take that off. Like, he's like, I can't be seen with you in my office. He goes, listen, if you take that off, like, put it in your pocket, I don't want to see it. But we can come talk like two people. But if you're talking to me as an AIPAC representative, then no, we're not. But anyway, so he was going off on this whole thing. It was just so heroic. It was just so, like, it shouldn't even be heroic. It should just be like every man should be willing to just tell the truth. But he was talking about how, like, look, we're $35 trillion in debt. We don't have money for foreign wars of other countries. Like, hey, whatever, good luck. And he goes, I don't really love what Israel's doing to Gaza, but okay, that's their business, not ours, but we can't fund it. And the same day, or maybe the next day, Donald Trump had some interview where he was like talking about how he'll be a better friend to Israel than Joe Biden. And so I tweeted, I said, a very simple tweet that went super viral. I said, Thomas Massie is more America first than Donald Trump will ever be, and it's not even close. And I got all of these people, like Trump supporters who listened to me, followers of mine, and they were like, why would you even say this right now? Like Thomas Massie's not running for president. Donald Trump is. Why would you even say this? Why would you say something that's going to hurt Trump? And I remember I was really taken back by it, because it just demonstrated such a disconnect between the way they think and the way I think. Because immediately when they're like, why would you even say something like this? I was like,
because it's true.
Yeah, that's it. That's the entire thing, because it's true. And I speak true things out loud into the world. Like, that's what you do. When you think of something that's true, you tell it to other people because it's true. And like, people get sucked into this mentality of like, no. Don't say anything that could damage our guy. It's the worst thing about election seasons. Agreed. And you go, look, man, I don't have a candidate who I'm like enthusiastically supporting this time around. But even if I did, even if you were running, or if Spike was running, or if Tom Woods, or if Scott, or like someone, Jeff Dice, someone who I just like completely love and I'm totally going to vote for that person was running. If you started saying some shit that I thought was wrong, I'd go, hey man, no, it's not like that. It's like this. And what I'd be trying to do is move you in that direction, and like trying to be like, no, because of course and especially for any politician, this is the only time when they actually need something from you. And so for all of you pro-Trump influencers out there, I get being on Trump's side will always get you more clicks or more. Believe me, I know, Clint knows. Yep. We could all grow our following by just falling in line and supporting Trump no matter what. But don't you, like, even if you want Trump to win, don't you think like maybe it's valuable for someone with some influence to say, all right, but you got to be really good on this issue we care about? And like, what issue unites Trump supporters more than being for gun rights? You know, like it's like he's pushing them on the issue that you all agree with him on. Right. So frustrating.
Aside from maybe the wall, I think gun rights is probably at the top. But just to prove that we are not talking out of our asses here, this is actually what you and I do. You had RFK Jr. on, and you're holding his feet to the fire, desperately trying to get him to be better on the Israel-Gaza situation. I've had Vivek on.
Spoiler alert, I failed.
yes, I know. And I failed too. I had Vivek on, and I'm talking to him about the war on drugs and the fact that they're talking about, basically ending the war against Russia, but then transferring the war again to the cartels and maybe against China with Taiwan. And I'm trying to be like, what are we doing here? Why can we just not intervene? Can we not? And so my point is, like, we both could have just given fluff jobs to these guys when we had them on, and maybe it even hurts my chances of getting them to come back on the show, but it doesn't change the fact that if I don't get to say the thing I actually believe and try and shift their opinion, people that may wield immense power one day, if I fail in that moment, then what the fuck am I doing? Like, what am I even attempting to do here? Get a little bit more followers and clicks and money from doing the show? It's like, no, I got involved with this because I actually care, because I think that what we're facing is extraordinarily dangerous, and if we don't have people that are telling the truth, even if it costs them something, then we are totally doomed. And I guess that's why this past weekend and the whole Rittenhouse situation really like set me off, because I was like, these people are fucking reprehensible. And that was honestly how I felt. Yeah, man, I couldn't agree with you more. And like, it's just the whole, especially when you have a situation with Donald Trump where, I mean, like, look, let's call a spade. He totally failed in his first administration. And I don't know how anyone from an America First point of view could even argue with that. It's like, the guy's appointments were terrible. His, certainly some of his instincts were very good. Some of the things he ran on were very good. His follow through is like a D-. His appointments are an F. You could find like 3 or 4 good appointments and then like 70 terrible ones, like it's really, really bad. And so you're like, okay, people are saying, well, no, he's learned this time. This time's going to be way better. This time he's coming in to abolish the deep state. This time he's not coming in to reform it or whatever. It's like, okay, the problem is every single signal that he sends is that he hasn't learned anything. And so it's like, I could be theoretically convinced to vote for Donald Trump. I think there's an argument to be made for it. I could never be convinced that my job from here until November isn't to try to push the issues that I care about. Like, that's insane to me. The idea that it's like, no, what you have to do is not just support them,
from here till November, the only time when you hold some leverage, shut up and comply and fall into line. And one rule of thumb, if I've learned nothing else in life in 41 years, is that anyone telling you to shut up and comply is your enemy.
Yep. No, I agree, man. And let's also think about, like, who is the political figure that has risen the most over the past 12 months? Well, it's clearly Vivek Ramaswamy. And what has Vivek done? If nothing else, what he has done is he has challenged Donald Trump to be better at the things that he claims to be great at. When it's like, yeah, we're actually going to cut the deep state, 75% head count across all federal departments. Like, and, you know, we're going to end these wars. We're going to do all these things that, like, basically he's talking about the failings of Donald Trump, but he's not saying so explicitly. He's just saying, like, this is what we're going to do in the second term. And whether or not he actually ends up in the cabinet or in a position where he can actually assist with that process, I still appreciate that rhetoric because it challenges their deity. And it's like, we can do better. We have to do better. It's not that we can do better. We must do better. We are the largest government in human history. We're going to pay over $1.5 trillion in interest alone on the debt over the next 12 months. We are fucking bankrupt. We are bankrupt, and we are on the precipice of a multi-front world war with multiple nuclear powers. This is extraordinarily dangerous. We cannot just be Donald Trump from 2016 to 2020. We need Donald Trump to be infused with Ron Paul and then sprinkled with holy water and pray to fucking God that he actually does something good in the second term. And then on top of that, we have to then put him in a fucking glass bubble and make sure he doesn't get killed before then. I mean, we're asking for a lot of miracles here.
All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is CrowdHealth. We all know health insurance is broken. Premiums are increasing, deductibles are getting larger, and claim denials are becoming more common. The headache of health insurance is exactly why CrowdHealth was created. It's not health insurance. It's a better way to pay for healthcare through crowdfunding. CrowdHealth gives their members the freedom to efficiently and affordably break free from the antiquated insurance system and into a healthcare option that will actually fit your needs. I love this company, CrowdHealth. I think it's incredible what they've created, and I think it's a great alternative to the corrupt crony insurance system. The insurance companies don't give you the peace of mind you need. CrowdHealth does. That's why your $50 a month membership includes the tools and services you need to get the highest quality healthcare. You'll get access to telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, and so much more without doctors' networks messing things up. Plus, you'll have access to your own personal care advocate who will help you navigate the complexities of health events and even negotiate bills on your behalf. And of course, you'll join the crowd, a group of members just like you who want to help pay for each other's unexpected medical events. It's time to opt out of restrictive health insurance plans and let CrowdHealth help fit your healthcare needs. Get started for just $50 a month. Go to joincrowdhealth.com/POTP to get the healthcare you deserve. CrowdHealth is not insurance. Learn more at joincrowdhealth.com. Joincrowdhealth.com/POTP. That's where you got to go to get started today. All right, let's get back into the show.
By the way, I wanted to ask you about this. So I was thinking about, we were running through the chronology, and we've already said all the negatives about Trump, so we don't have to double down on that. But I think that you're probably the best I know at being able to recall the details of this. So I was, based off of the assassination attempt against Trump, I was trying to extrapolate forward from all of the deep state attacks against Trump and how those dots connect. And basically, they attempted everything, and then they tried the last thing, which is, extrajudicial violence. And do you think that the spying from the FBI, which ultimately, help me connect these dots because I know you remember this story better than I do. The spying from the FBI, they lied to the FISA court. They also, I think they lie about the fact that Carter Page was in fact a CIA asset. And
yes.
Okay.
So for this story, so when the FBI is applying for the FISA court permission to for surveillance on Carter Page, which essentially is the Trump campaign, right? So Carter Page was like an advisor, a foreign policy advisor on Trump's campaign in 2016. And the way it works is if you spy on one guy, you can also spy on anyone they talk to. So it's like the 1 degree of separation. So as soon as you get that, you get everyone. And so the FBI and the one lawyer for the FBI who actually got indicted over this, he was the only person who got anything over Russiagate, but he didn't do jail time, but he did get charged and convicted. But so essentially it's really bonkers. But so they went to the CIA and they were like, hey, we believe the FBI counterintelligence went to the CIA and said, hey, so we believe that Carter Page was approached by the Russians. And the CIA goes, yes, he was approached by the Russians. We know this because he immediately came back and told us about it because he's with us. Like, he's a good guy. And they said on the application to the FISA court, they go, we believe he was approached by the Russians, and this was confirmed by the CIA. Which is true,
right?
Technically, but like when you testify in court and they say, "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth,
yeah.
and nothing but it's because lies by omission are just as bad as lies." So they basically went, "Oh yeah, the CIA confirms that this did happen." Meanwhile, the CIA had been like, no, we know this happened, and it happened because he's not a Russian spy. So, by the way, Carter Page, they spied on him. They got 3 FISA court warrants, and still no charges against Carter Page for being a Russian agent. So, yes. Anyway, I'm sorry. Where were you going with that?
Yeah, no, but I mean, he was ultimately their guy. So, of course, he's not going to get charges, even if they caught him with something. Like, he was probably doing the bidding of the CIA. All right. So then you have the Steele dossier, which is Hillary Clinton's campaign using the probably MI5 or MI6 asset to once again craft a totally fictitious narrative about Trump, which they then use the fact that they were spying on him to basically add credibility to the fact that these things might be all genuine because we're connecting dots that don't really exist. And by the time everybody figures out that this is all bullshit, it will already have, tainted his reputation, in a way that he can never recover. But then, so this is where I'm trying to connect this dot. What I'm thinking is that Trump, as you know, we both joke about how little this guy reads and how little he seems to know about things. The fact that he was inquiring about Joe Biden's history in Ukraine with Burisma and his son and all that, what I'm thinking is that because he's not actually reading, he doesn't actually know the history of the Russia-Ukraine conflict and all that stuff, but he's thinking to himself, these people are accusing me of treason when it comes to Russia. Maybe this has something to do with Ukraine because I'm dealing with the Ukrainians and they're asking for munitions because they're basically going to go to war with Russia at some point potentially. So I'm going to use the leverage I have to get to the bottom of this. Like, why the fuck are they trying to bury me before I'm even in the White House? There must be some real shenanigans here. Let's see if I can figure it out. So my thesis is that the FBI spying on him before he is even the president leads to that phone call, which then leads to the impeachment based off of the quid pro quo conversation that he's having with, was it Zelensky?
Yeah, it was Zelensky.
It was Zelensky, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if I could prove that connection as to why he would be having that phone call or why he would even be thinking that way. But I think it's an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah, I mean, my guess on the perfect call, that he has, as
beautiful. People say it was beautiful.
My guess is that someone must have told him. Maybe it was Giuliani. I mean, I don't know who it might have been, but someone must have told him that, there's a lot of really shady stuff going on here. The Ukrainian relationship with the Bidens, there's a lot of really shady stuff happening. And so once he found out that Biden was going to run for president and that they wanted weapons from the U.S., he was like, well, let me see if I can. Essentially, I do think it is what the Democrats would accuse him of doing. In the simplest sense, it was like, yeah, that's my political opponent. And I've heard he's doing all this corrupt stuff there that was probably illegal. So, okay, he wants something from me. Let me pressure him to get what I want. Essentially, this is how I think Donald Trump operates. He's trying to win, and he doesn't have a great sense of exactly what's legal and what's not legal, or exactly what's, what you can do. He doesn't really know how to wield power. So he was Trump, just kind of and look, it's another example of Donald Trump failing to wield power, because what is he, what's so funny is what me and you focus on this a lot, because I know we've for years been really obsessively focused on this crazy war in Ukraine and the possibility of a wider or even nuclear war. And we've both done debates on this topic and stuff. But I think that, it's to most people, the big story was Donald Trump threatened to hold up weapons until they investigated his political opponent. But of course, the real story is that he gave
them weapons.
He never got the investigations, and he sent the weapons in. But I do, if I'm and this is just guesswork, but my guess would be that Donald Trump heard there was some shady stuff that they were doing. Whoever told him that was right. And he thought, oh, let me try to extort this out of him. And then probably a bunch of people around him were like, dude, you can't extort a weapons deal until you get this thing you want. He backed off, and ultimately they got the weapons. Because like you said, he never had any real understanding of what the situation there was. And he wasn't wise enough to just go, no, I'm not going to send weapons into a civil war on Russia's border, because what might that lead to? Which again is like, Donald Trump holds so much responsibility on this. The example, like, I'm sure it's not mine that I've invented, but that I've said several times. Like, I mean, just imagine if there was we were in a trade partnership with Mexico, and then China or whoever came in and overthrew the government in Mexico, totally led and backed a coup that overthrew that government, who was about to sign a trade deal with us. And then as a result of that coup, a civil war broke out. And then China just started arming the other side of it. Do you think the result would be that, as they said, they said that the weapons were to disincentivize Putin from doing it? So do you think if China overthrew the government in Mexico and installed a pro-China government, and then a civil war broke out, and then they started funding the pro-China side of the civil war, do you think that would make DC go, well, we better not intervene then?
We were going to invade, but then they started to put weapons in there. Well, and now we're not going to. Get the fuck out of here. If they put weapons in there, we would be up their ass in a heartbeat. But see, here's the thing about the Trump call with Zelensky. This is one of the rare times where I'm like, this is totally within the purview of a presidential's capacity, in my opinion, that you ought to be able to say, as the commander in chief, hey, before we send these military grade weapons to this nation that's on the border of a nuclear power, I actually think that there's genuine corruption that's happening in this nation, and I'd like to get to the bottom of it. And sure, maybe it has to do with my top political opponent in the next election. Maybe. I'm not really sure at this point. But I need fucking answers before we send weapons into a war zone against a nuclear power. That should... I don't even know why that should be illegal. And then on top of that, that actually demonstrates kind of... I mean, yes, there is self-interest there, but it also demonstrates a level of kind of childlike naivete where he's like, I'm just going to use the leverage I have to try and get the truth here, because this is a bad thing. And if these people are actually corrupt and making millions of dollars off of shady business deals, and it's risking a war with the biggest nuclear power on earth, we ought to know that. So I don't know. That's kind of my thesis.
So look, it's like all these things. It's like the weird when you're dealing with government, you're dealing with this weird quasi gray area of morality always. You know what I mean? That's kind of just the nature of the state. And so, I mean, look, you could make an argument that a quid pro quo, as long as it's in the national interest, is totally fine. Right?
Exactly.
That's the nature of foreign relations, is that any relationship we have, any business deal we make with another country is like, hey, okay, we will, whatever it is, we will give you copper if you give us bananas. Anything like that is it is a quid pro quo, but that's totally fine as long as it's in the interest of the nation. Now, if Donald Trump were to say, hey, I'll give you this weapons deal if you put $10 million in my bank account, then we would all
you're going to pay $50 million more than market value for Trump Tower.
Right, to you. Something like that. Yeah. You would go, okay, obviously that's corruption because it's in your interest, not in the nation's interest.
Exactly.
Now, if you're talking about so where you get into the gray area where it's kind of hard, this is true with every president, it's not just Donald Trump, but if you're saying something like, hey, I'll do this if you investigate my political opponent, I do understand where there's an argument you could make that that's in his own interest. The problem is that if there is actual corruption, from a former vice president and his son, then you can clearly argue that that's also just in the national interest and the interest of justice or anything like that. And so I do think that it's such a gray area and so questionable that, again, you could find with any president lots of areas like that where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's so it's bullshit.
But they impeached him for it. I mean, so this is once again something that I think is basically a cover up of the Democrats' activities that then leads to Trump being impeached. And that's kind of what happened with the FBI and the spying early on, the Steele dossier.
Yes.
So we have all of these examples, right? And then he gets out of power, and then, I mean, add to that the Whitmer kidnapping, where you have a dozen FBI informants that are involved with less than that are the guys that are actually being accused.
Oh, yeah. No, the Whitmer thing, you can, I think, pretty clearly say was a completely fabricated, attempted October surprise to demonize not only Trump supporters, but anti-lockdowners in general and say, oh, look, the people who hate the lockdowns are so crazy they were trying to kill a governor.
Right.
Yeah.
And then add to that the J6 shenanigans where you have plainclothes police officers as well as assets, which we've never got clarity because even when questioned by Congress, they still would not give a clear answer as to how many were actually involved. But
I'll say to that pretty reasonably, we can say, obviously, Ray Epps, who Democratic congressmen are going from you're an insurrectionist and you should go to jail forever to like he's a victim and all this. Clearly, a lot of shenanigans. There's a lot of different aspects to January 6th, but the packages that they still haven't found, Nancy Pelosi's video in her car where she's saying it's all my fault. I mean, there's a whole lot to that, but that was clearly an inside job to some extent.
Yes, and then you have the explosive device, which is right outside of Kamala Harris's location on that day, and there's still no answer, despite the fact that they've geofenced the entire area, and they've caught everybody, including 90-year-olds that have no weapons and that were never a danger to do anything. Everybody basically is getting prosecuted, but you can't get this guy who, by the way, you have on video, and you also have their cell phone data, but then it vanishes. And then, might I add, Kim Cheadle, the head of the Secret Service, is also responsible for the data that gets dumped for that day. So another cover-up, in my opinion, and yet another opportunity to demonize not just Trump, but also his supporters, right? All right, now we have multiple trials that get rolled out. Might I add, almost everything he's being accused of, I think Biden or Obama or Bush have been guilty of that or worse, or maybe even the exact same thing with the document case at Mar-a-Lago. I think Biden's clearly guilty of that. But then they try and throw him in jail for 700-800 years, whatever it is. And it's like everything keeps falling apart, time and time again. And this is why a lot of people come to the conclusion that like maybe they're actually not trying to get him. And I'm like, no, I don't think that's it. I think that he really doesn't do that much bad. Like this guy was working in New York as a real estate developer. He was brought up under Roger Stone and the attorney, I'm forgetting his name, but he was actually the attorney for the mafia.
Yeah. Yes, so, I know who you're talking about. I'm forgetting his name also. I know exactly what you're talking about though. Yeah.
So he was basically schooled up on, hey, if you want to ever make it in this game and not be compromised, you're going to have to not do drugs. You're going to have to not have sexual picadillos. You're going to have to be like,
well, he definitely had some sexual things, but I guess, whatever. Yeah.
Yes. But I'm talking like consenting adults. Fine. Okay. But like, don't go to parties. Don't get drunk. Don't sleep with people that you don't know for a little while. So you can make sure that you're not being caught up in something. So it's like, I think that this guy, despite the fact that like he's not the best person on the planet by any stretch of the imagination, but I just think he's really not that dirty. Like it's really hard to get this guy, thrown in prison because he's just doing things the right way and he's trying to keep his head above water. So I think that's why at this point it's fair to conclude, or at least theorize or hypothesize, that they took a shot at Donald Trump, that they tried everything else, all of these things that we just laid out, Dave, which, as you know, the attention span of the American people is about 60 fucking seconds. So they've forgotten half, if not 90% of what we just detailed. And it's like, after all of that, do you think that it's totally outside of the realm of possibility that they would also try and take him out? And then you consider fact that...
Listen, all of that happened up to the assassination attempt. You're absolutely right. They framed the candidate for treason, and then once he won the presidency, they continued to frame him for treason. accused him of being a part of a conspiracy with hostile foreign power that was broadcast on the media every single day. Then they tried to impeach him for demanding investigations into the Biden crime family. Then they impeached him again for January 6th, which was an inside job, which was set up by law enforcement. Then they weaponized the justice system against him, and they charged him with every nonsense thing that you would never charge a former president with, even though there's way better things to charge other former presidents for and him for. Yep. But it all stops that day where the Secret Service and everybody else. Have you seen the video of the guy pacing back and forth on the roof? There's just a guy pacing back and forth on a roof with a sniper. And there's a lot of people in the crowd saying, hey, there's a sniper up there. Nobody heard that. You know what I mean? Nobody got that. And and so it happened. And so someone got a shot off at his head. Yeah. I don't see why you're trying to connect that one event to this other series of events, Clint. I don't see any connection there.
I know. I'm definitely stretching, but let me
I'll tell you, it's harder and harder to look at the assassination attempt of Donald Trump and see it for anything other than what it obviously is.
Thank you. And I think
that's it. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Moink. Moink delivers grass-fed and grass-finished beef, lamb, pasteurized pork, chicken, sustainable wild-caught Alaskan salmon, all straight to your door. Moink farmers farm like our grandparents did, and as a result, Moink meat tastes like it should, because the family farm does it better. You choose the meats delivered in every box. You can choose from ribeyes, chicken breasts, pork chops, salmon fillets, and much more. Plus, you can cancel anytime. I got to tell you guys, I've been using Moink for a while now. I love it. I do not trust the meat in my supermarket. I don't even trust my local butchers. I want to get my stuff directly from a family farm, and I'm telling you, it is the most delicious meat you'll ever taste. Keep American farmers going by signing up at moinkbox.com/POTP right now, and listeners of this show will get 2 free steaks in your first box. It's the best steak you'll ever taste, but for a limited time only, go on over. Come on, 2 free steaks I'm going to get you right now. That's moinkbox.com/POTP. That's MOINKBOX.com/POTP. Moinkbox.com/POTP. All right, let's get back into the show.
Let me just add some additional bizarre details of that day.
Sure.
So Donald Trump, who was the former president of the United States, and might I add, the favorite to be the next president of the United States, not just the favorite to be the GOP nominee, which was going to happen 48 hours after a bullet came 1 inch from taking his life. 48 fucking hours, David. That's crazy. That coincidental, that's when the attack happens. And by the way, Nikki Haley, who was, the top second person, would have almost certainly got the nod. While the nation was in mourning, you would have had Nikki Haley, the neocon princess that just gets foisted upon us. I'm just being honest with you. That's what I think was the plan here. Okay, so now add to this the fact that they did not have a counter sniper detail, a Secret Service counter sniper detail was not on Trump since he's left office. That report came out today. So this is the first fucking time that you have a Secret Service counter sniper team on Trump at all. And it happens to be that the local PD, which is put inside the building.
So that day he got shot was the first time they had a counter sniper?
The very first time in years. How crazy is that?
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that until this morning. Blew my fucking socks off. Now add to that you're using a supplemental local PD as your security detail because you've pulled off almost all of the Secret Service detail from Trump, who's obviously in danger because you guys have described him as Hitler for fucking 8 years straight. He's obviously in tremendous danger.
Yeah.
You've put it on Jill Biden, not Joe Biden. Jill Biden has the majority of Trump's security detail on him that day. So then you have supplemental security, which is the local
Wait, I'm
PD.
sorry. What's that? What's the thing about Jill Biden?
Jill Biden had an event that day, and they pulled off most of his regular security detail to cover Jill instead.
Jesus.
Yes.
All right. So that I didn't know either. Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
So wow. I've been going hard on this for the past 2 weeks. So I'm like deep in the weeds. All right. Now on top of that, the building that is behind the glass building, which is where the sniper ultimately takes the shot, is the actual Overwatch location for the local counter sniper team, not the Secret Service counter sniper team. And these fucking dudes take a photo of this kid over a half an hour before the shots ring out. So they already see him 130 yards away using a rangefinder, a device that would assist a sniper in deciding if this was a shot that could actually be attained or not. And they go, this is fucking suspicious. And they text it to one another. So we actually have the timestamp and the records of this to prove it. Yes. Okay. So you have that. You have this weird kid. You have him with the fucking rangefinder, device that a sniper ought to or would be using. And you still don't delay. I'm not saying cancel. I'm just saying delay. Don't let Trump take that stage. You don't do any of that. Then speed up another 25 minutes or so, and he's now up on the roof, and you have spectators that are in the crowd. Local PD is now circling the building, building a perimeter. We're talking minutes prior to the shots actually ringing out, and they are shouting to the crowd, clear out, clear out. Like they know that there's an imminent fucking threat. Yeah. They still don't communicate that to Trump's Secret Service detail. And according to Kim Cheadle in the testimony 3 days after this attack, there are no recordings of the communications from the local PD and the Secret Service detail. So we will never know if she's telling the truth. I don't know. We will never know if they actually sent a signal to the Secret Service team to get Trump off that stage. And that, my friend, would be the only time we would know whether or not there was a stand down order. So, yeah, I'm not feeling real positive about it.
Yeah, it does. Again, it does. All the signs just point toward what it obviously is, which is, I will say, I think for a lot of people, myself included, even seeing all of these signs and even kind of just being like, hey, this is obviously what it is. It's almost like, if there was somebody who broke in to every house and robbed it. They broke into 4 houses in a row, and then the same person is breaking into a 5th house, and you're like, what do you think they're doing? You think they're just knocking on the door? And you're like, no, this is obviously the same thing. But even for people like us, I think it is hard to accept that you go, wait, seriously? That was your plan to blow his brains out on national television? That's really what you were going to do? Do you know what that would have done to this country? And I'm somebody who goes, I think Kamala Harris winning will be a nightmare. I think Donald Trump winning probably won't be great. But my God, do you know what blowing his brains out on national television? Just forget how you feel about Trump, even if you think he deserves it. How about the country? What would just happen as a result of that? Also, have you seen, I know it was somebody from The Blaze was doing this reporting, but you know how it's like how they track your cell phones, because it's not just the government is tracking your cell phones, it's every goddamn app on your phone is tracking your cell phone. And they tracked one of the phones from his house to DC and back again or something like that. So you also have that.
Well, let me also add.
It doesn't look good. Doesn't look good, guys.
It doesn't look good. And then let me also add the local counter sniper team, which is taking the photo of this kid and sending it to the other local PD and saying, this is fucking weird. They leave their Overwatch location. Okay, so let me explain. This is the window that you see directly behind. This is a 2-story building. The building that the kid's laying on top of is a 1-story building. The incredibly sloped roof that is actually totally flat.
That was their first excuse, was that it was too sloped.
So crazy.
By the way, I just love and go ahead, but I just love Glenn Greenwald's point on this was just so great that I didn't even think of, but was just so great, is they go, the first thing they said was the roof was too sloped, and that's why they didn't want to put agents on that roof. And then Glenn Greenwald goes, but the guy on the roof got shot and killed, and his body didn't fall off the roof.
Right.
So doesn't even move. When he's lifeless and laying there, he's fine. Yeah. Like he's not falling off the roof. So how is it possible that this was too sloped for you to get on, for you in a live person to get on the roof? Seems like it's feasible.
That add to that the fucking the Secret Service counter sniper team is actually on a roof with a steeper pitch. It is much more steep.
Oh my God.
So it was just a flat out lie, but this is why I'm starting to think cover up. Then add to that the local counter sniper team, which is in the second story window, that is at literally perfect vantage point as Overwatch to where the kid eventually takes those shots. They leave their position minutes before the shots ring out to go find this fucking kid who's suspicious. And they still, even though they have seen a threat that is so concerning that they're going to leave their counter sniper position. They're going to leave that, but they still don't communicate that to the actual Secret Service. Get the fuck out of here, Dave Smith. There is no fucking way that is protocol. There is no way that you use supplemental detail, but you don't have a unified communication system so that if there's an imminent red alert that you can immediately pull Trump off that stage. If that's how the government functions, then abolish the whole thing. Obviously I'm biased towards feeling that way anyways, but if this is how the government functions, then it should not exist. It's nuts that anybody thinks it should.
Yeah, listen. Amen to that. Yeah, dude, it is I think in a lot of ways we all kind of knew what we were looking at when we were looking at it. And now with all of this information coming out, it's harder and harder to not see it for what it is. All right, listen, dude, we do have to wrap this up, but we should do another podcast soon because there's a lot more to talk about with all of this stuff. Anyway, well, I think if I could conclude what we've been trying to say here, vote Kamala Harris. That's what we're trying to say. She's the future. Kamala Harris, Chase Oliver as her VP, and we're going to get this thing going. That's what's going to turn this nation around.
That'll fix everything.
Clint, you're the man, dude. Thank you so much for taking time. Where can people find your stuff? Obviously, Liberty Lockdown. Obviously, you have your podcast with Luke. Yep. What are you guys calling it? I'm sorry. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's the best political show. We have an exclusive deal on Rumble where it's all one word. We are change. We go live 3 days a week. But yeah, Liberty Lockdown is the flagship for me, and this is actually you won't believe this, and I'm sure you don't remember, and that's totally fine. Do not feel bad. This is the second birthday in a row I've spent with you, Dave Smith. I was actually
is it really? Happy birthday, sir.
Thank you, man. I was at your comedy show, I don't know, Palm Beach or whatever it was last year on my birthday.
Oh yeah, and that was a year ago.
So the fact that you hit me up, I was like he must have remembered. No, it's fine.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't at all.
Okay.
I don't care.
Just for future reference.
How old are you?
Oh, 1,000 years old. For future reference, the reason.
What are you? Are you 40 today?
No, I'm your age. Remember?
Oh, you're 41. That's right. Yeah. I thought maybe you were a year younger. I knew you were slumping. All right.
No, I'm old as shit, dude.
Well, you caught up. All right.
But here's the easiest way to remember. I share a birthday with Barack Obama, so that's the easiest way for people to remember. But if anybody wants to
I couldn't imagine sharing a birthday with someone that evil. I share a birthday with Adolf Hitler.
That's what I thought. Anyways, if anybody wants to support my work at Liberty Lock Pod on X, you guys subscribe there. I'll follow you back. For my birthday present, all I ask is that your glorious, illustrious, beautiful, savage-based audience follow and subscribe to Liberty Lockdown so that they can check me out. And thank you so much for having me.
There's no one better you could follow than Clint Russell. So please do go follow him. And Clint, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we'll do it again real soon. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Peace.